Chapter 18. They got back to me the next morning. They said yes, the show was on. Magic 3 was back in business. I was so excited that if you hold this book to your ear, you can hear me jumping up and down. Chapter 19. At exactly 7 o'clock Saturday night, we pushed the giant hat through the swinging doors of McKelty's Rolling Bowl. If I do say so myself, the hat was awesome. It was big and black, and it had wheels. We even built the secret pocket inside where Cheerio could hide until it was time to pull him out. To keep him happy, we put doggy treats inside the pocket with him. McKelty's was jammed with people. It was opening night for bowling league season. There were 12 teams. Each had their own lane and their own shirts. Papa Pete and the chopped livers were on lane 5, warming up. In the middle of the bowling alley, where they usually serve pizza at birthday parties, my mom had put out sandwiches. Papa Pete had warned her that anything with soy was out of the question. It had to be the real thing. I could smell the hot pastrami on fresh rye. My mouth started to water, but I knew we had more important things to do before we ate. "Attention bowlers," came a voice from the loudspeaker. I knew that voice. Magic 3 couldn't be with us tonight because one of its members was grounded for being too stupid to write his essay, the voice said. The McKelty factor strikes again. Instead, we have something much better, a thrilling, unbelievable, death-defying bowling exhibition that stars me. Leave it to Nick McKelty to put together a show starring only himself. That slimy toad thinks he's taken our spot, Ashley said. Yeah, well, I hope that slimy toad can swim because I'm going to flush him down the toilet, Frankie growled. The loudspeaker crackled again. For my first feat, I'm going to bowl a strike with my left hand blindfolded. Before we knew it, Nick appeared on lane 10. The jerk was actually wearing a blindfold. Everyone watched as he brought the ball up to his chest. On his bowling ball was a big picture of his slimy face. Unbelievable. He took 1, 2, 3 steps toward the line and let the ball fly off his fingers. It landed on the lane with a thud and rolled smack into the gutter. The crowd moaned. I knew this was our opportunity. I jumped up onto the bleachers and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, how about that Nick McKelty, the bowling whiz? Doesn't he look great in a blindfold? Let's give it up for him." Everyone laughed. I motioned for Frankie and Robert to wheel out the hat. Nick looked stunned. He tried to take off his blindfold, but he had tied the knot too tightly. While we're setting up for the real entertainment, take a moment to enjoy the mouth acrobatics of Miss Ashley Wong as she tries to tie not 1, but 2 cherry stems into a knot, never once using her hands, I said with pride. I handed Ashley 2 cherries from the bar. She popped them into her mouth, scrunching up her face and moving her tongue a mile a minute. As she worked, she strolled around the audience, showing off her t-shirt with the red rhinestone cherries. By the time she got back to where she began, she had produced 2 knotted cherry stems, connected at the top. They looked like a small Christmas tree. Papa Pete led the applause. Frankie gave me the nod. He was ready to go. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for the main event. I'm happy to present the freestyling magic of Frankie Townsend and Magic 3, I announced. "Hey, what about my bowling tricks?" Nick McKelty shouted. He'd finally managed to untie his blindfold. His eyes looked blazing mad. "I'm not done yet." "Yes, you are," the crowd yelled back. Nick ran into his father's office to sulk. Frankie moved right into his act. He pulled scarves from his sleeve, cut a rope into 3 pieces and put it back together, and pushed a pencil through the center of a quarter that he borrowed from Papa Pete. That truly is one of my favorite tricks, and Frankie, that rat, won't tell me how he does it. Ashley and Robert wheeled out the hat while I kept a watch on Cheerio, trying to keep him calm. He was getting that look in his eye, his pre-spinning look. "Not now, Cheerio," I whispered to him, scratching him between the ears. He loves that. "Don't go crazy on me, boy." "And now for my grand finale," announced Frankie. "At the special request of Papa Pete, I will pull a small, live, furry thing from this magic top hat." "It's probably a stuffed teddy bear," McKelty shouted from the office doorway. I'm sure everyone would rather see me throw a strike backward between my legs, again using my left hand, wouldn't you? It was his father who gave him the answer. Everyone else was thinking, "Be quiet, Nick," he said, "and enjoy the show." "Here we have a hat," Frankie began, pointing to our giant top hat. "My assistants will show you the inside of the hat." Ashley and I tipped the hat forward so everyone could see in. Cheerio was tucked in his secret pocket so you couldn't see him. I thought I heard a tiny yip as he slid against the side. "Notice that it's actually empty," Robert said with this kind of goofy smile. We had decided to give him a line. "I will now take my cape and cover the hat," Frankie said. He showed the audience both sides of the cape and laid it over the hat like a tablecloth. The place was silent, except if you stood close enough so that to the hat you could hear the crunch, crunch, crunch of doggy treats inside Cheerio's mouth. Hank, the magic words, if you please," Frankie said. I stepped forward, closed my eyes, waved my hands over the cape. We hadn't rehearsed that part, but I thought it added a lot to the moment, and I chanted, "Something live, something furry, appear now, in a hurry." "Zingawi!" Frankie shouted as he pulled the cape off the hat. People in the audience moved to the edge of their seats. Everyone was completely quiet. Frankie reached into that hat. Suddenly there was a sound. It was the growl of one very angry little dog. Frankie pulled his hand out of the hat really fast. Cheerio stuck his face out, his paws hanging over the brim of the hat. He looked at the audience, and I don't think he'd ever seen so many people in one place. The audience burst into laughter and applause, which must have really scared Cheerio because he dove back down to the bottom of the hat and started to spin. And I don't mean just regular spinning. No, this was mega spinning. He was going so fast the hat started to move down the lane. "Is this part of the trick?" I whispered to Frankie. "He's your dog." "Zip, don't ask me," he answered. By that time the hat was rocketing down the lane. It turned around and around, picking up speed from the oil on the wood. In no time it was at the end of the lane. Smack! The hat crashed into the pins, sending them flying in every direction. 9 pins went down. The last one teetered back and forth, back and forth. Almost, yes, no, yes. Finally it fell. The crowd gasped. "How about that for a strike?" Papa Pete yelled. The place went wild. Everyone was applauding. Everyone but Nick McKelty. He just stood by the sandwiches scowling. "Hey, doesn't anyone want to see my world-famous left-handed trick shot?" he yelled. "Give it up, Nick," I said to him. "You can't top the hat." He was so mad his face turned bright red. "Fine," he said. "I'm getting a vanilla Coke and you can't have one." "Is he the comeback king or what?" Ashley said. We all laughed and he stomped off. Cheerio was out of the hat by now, sliding down the lane as he tried to make his way toward me. He looked like he was on ice skates. I think he was still feeling dizzy because his eyes were spinning in opposite directions. I scooped him up and gave him a big hug. I turned around. All the people in the bowling alley were on their feet cheering for Cheerio and for us, the Magic Three. Frankie, Ashley, Robert, and I joined hands and took a bow. It was the greatest feeling of my entire life.